In, out, in, out. Hello, my fellow readers. This is iDarkSymphony777 with another fan fiction review. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts on the story, and please make sure to actually read the story before doing the review, before watching the rest of this video. And finally, this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world, so please respect that. So this fan fiction I'm reviewing is the next chapter in the Shadowchasers series by Occam's Razor. That is Shadowchasers Torment. Now, when I got into Torment, because I'm actually reading these, I'm actually almost done. I just have the last story, which is Conspiracy. I was hoping that it'd be better than the last two stories, which was Power Primordial and Soulscape. Those were pretty bad. And I am happy to say that my expectations were beaten. I didn't have high expectations going into the story. I had pretty low them. And then Torment completely rejuvenated what I wanted out of the Shadowchasers stories. A good group dynamic between a bunch of characters, a solid amount of world building, and pretty entertaining. I really only have like one problem with Torment specifically, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So, for the most part, Torment in terms of plot is just a general take over the world scheme. Instead of happening in Neo Domino, this actually takes place in Chicago, America. Thank God, somewhere besides Yugioh and the rest of the gang, because even after the end of Power Primordial, you didn't really have anything. Well, even with Power Primordial, you didn't have anything left for the characters to do. So it's refreshing to see we get a new group. We got the Tough Foot Fair. I burped a little bit. Excuse me, I'm actually trying not to burp. We have the Tough But Fair Dugan, who is actually the leader of the group. We have the nerd Carl. We have Natalie, who is the very, very buff Amazonian chick. And then we got the main character, Ben. That's right, the guy's name is Ben. Yeah, this one kind of has shades of an amnesia plot, so more or less, I'm only going to cover the amnesia plot because it's kind of the most important thing. This guy, Ben, wakes up, doesn't remember who he is, and basically runs into the Chicago Shadowchasers group to basically try and figure out who he is, where did he come from, and why is he kind of stuck to a duel. So basically, and I don't want to talk too detail into this, but he has a special thing where his dual disc is actually cursed. So dual disc is actually the device in the Yu-Gi-Oh animes that people use to actually play the card games while far away and create the holograms. So what Ben's dual disc actually does is actually cursed. It doesn't have a deck. What happens is every time he duels, it cycles through a random deck that kind of fits the scenario he's going with and trying to figure that out. And he's trying to figure out why doesn't he have an actual deck? Why does he know how these cards work or stuff like that? And the whole story kind of revolves around him trying to get that memory back, while at the same time there's a plot going on with this primordial god of chaos named Tharzadun, and that's the big thing with Torment, is that it introduces the whole layers of heaven and hell, which I think was the perfect branching off point with in comparison to the original two stories, which just focused on yokais and demons. I know Torment also introduced the fact that yokais are actually a different thing. They kind of consider themselves different from regular demons. But now we have angels and devils and stuff like that. Granted, I think, if I remember right, there was more reference in like a celestial order in the first story with like a rogue dual robot that just wants to create balance for everything. I can't remember that. But by and large, the story just revolves around Ben. Because guess what? Ben is not his real name. I'm not going to tell you what his real name is. Because, well, honestly, at the very first chapter, they literally just... not Sophia. Natalie, what was his name? Let's see. I'm trying to remember what her Latin name is. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, no, Dugan. Dugan basically names Ben because he's, like, wondering. It's like, oh, I gotta call you something. And he looks up and sees a truck with a bus with, like, Uncle Ben on it. And it's like, I'll call you Ben. That's how I call you Ben. And, of course, and that's more or less the plot. I don't want to go too deep because, you know, there's a lot of intricate layers. Especially since this one kind of... The next story, Ascension, kind of continues on one or two of those threads. These similar... Yeah, this story and Ascension are kind of similar to Power Primordial and Soulscape in that they're kind of connected via a very specific plot line, but this one... But I'm not going to review Ascension alongside Torment because Ascension more or less has its own themes and different characters and all that. It's different enough that I'm going to review that separately. And also give me more time to finish Conspiracy. But I did like the plot. I do think the plot was well done. Yeah, it was very simple, but I always say it best. Simple is best. Sometimes you need a simple story. And it really does pick up in complexity with Ascension, and mainly in the themes, that story. But we'll get to Ascension when I get to Ascension, which is next week. But with Torment, you have a lot of good characters. I believe this is also a story that more thoroughly introduces legacy characters. What I mean by that is characters that appeared before 5Ds from the original and GX series. And we get to see them interact in the 5Ds world. We get Panic, which is if you don't know who Panic is infamously the guy from Duelist Kingdom that basically, you know, scared the deep bejeebers out of my Valentine and just took all our star chips. And then, of course, we got the famous moment where Yugi actually mind crushes the guy, even in the 4Kids stuff. I'm dead serious. They literally get rid of the Mind Crush in the Seto Kaiba duel and like all the other duels, but they keep the Mind Crush for Panic. Mainly, I guess I asked the whole Panic. That kind of makes sense. So his duel is the whole thing. We got like the biggest bullshit shenanigans that we get in like Yu-Gi-Oh ever, where he basically makes Gaia the Fierce Knight, Gaia the Dragon Champion, not Gaia the Fierce Knight, fly into the Castle of Dark Illusions Flotation Wing. It's like, I didn't attack the castle. I attacked the flotation ring. Are you bullshitting, Yug? Yes, because this is Duelist Kingdom, and everyone knows in Duelist Kingdom, you basically win if you bullshit the best. It's like, I don't think that makes sense. This is Season 1, nothing makes sense. We have to wait until Season 2 before we get rules. Yeah. What were they thinking when they thought of half the stuff on Season 1? I don't really know. Then again, Toons are like a completely clusterfuck. Don't ask me about anything regarding Toon World. So, yeah, with the plot, that's it. We also do get one other legacy character, but I'm going to save him for the end, because bear with me with that one. Now we move on to characters. We got 5 characters. We have... Ben, Natalie... No, we have 4. So, I think... The main reason why I actually think Torment is better than the original is because we have a better group dynamic with the main group. Cichiro, Jinx, Gears, and Ember, they're alright. They're functional for what the story was trying to do with the whole luck base, but they didn't really have a lot of chemistry with each other. And that kind of plays a part in the fact they weren't really all interacting with each other a lot. They did have some moments in the original Shadowchasers where they did interact, but it didn't came off that they had much chemistry. Like, the author didn't write that well enough chemistry, which makes sense because the fact at the time he was still new to writing, so he was still trying to figure things out as he goes. I can get that. Torment is where he got the how to develop a group dynamic right with Dugan, Natalie, and Ben. Which leaves us with Carl as the odd man out. This is actually my one problem with the story. I don't like Carl. I think Carl is very bland and boring. Like, with the other three characters, they not only have good characters, they have good character arcs. Like, with Ben, you have his whole amnesia idea. You know, with him trying to figure out what's wrong with him, he's trying to put his foot forward, and then the deepening mystery as the story goes on, with him wanting to redeem himself, wanting penance, and you don't really know what's going to happen. You have Dugan, who was an ex-Marine, who specifically plays a scrap deck. For those of you who don't know the Yu-Gi-Oh card game scrap decks, the scrapped archetype is basically just a monstrously really good Earth deck that basically cared about blowing itself up, and they have like different ways of like blowing themselves up to recur cost. And I like his idea, his philosophy behind scraps. Like, they keep blowing themselves, but they keep kind of repairing themselves back up to continue fighting. Basically, sort of like a Marine. I like that thematic consistency. And then we got Natalie, who is probably the best character of the group, and the fact that she's a very muscular, like, the story makes it very clear. She's ridiculously buff, but she has a heart of gold. She's a really nice girl. She's actually part of a group called St. Kubert, who actually, I believe, I didn't read the whole story of a later sub-series called Shackle City, but based on what I read, that story kind of goes more into depth on the St. Kubert organization. Not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that. But yeah. Natalie is one of those characters that you just kind of instantly recognize. Because, well, first off, she plays Amazonian because they kind of... the same thing as with Dugan and the scraps, they kind of have a thematic consistency to them. Like, the Amazonians are really, really, really buff women who don't take no shit, but but are kindly and they're willing to help each other out. So, and that's what Natalie is. She's a really buff woman. Men are intimidated by her, but she works at a soup kitchen. She's pretty religious. She wants to. It's kind of implied that she doesn't particularly fully care about the Shadowchaser organization. That's more vague hints than anything else. For all we know, that could be more developed in the Shackle City. Like, it's very obvious that she puts more of her time in St. Kubert's than the Shadowchasers organization. So there's a little conflict entrance. It's more of a seed, but you know, you can go somewhere with it. And then you got Carl, who is just there. Like, he's really just there for the most part. Like, it's so weird that you have these three characters that not only have good characters, but they have a good chemistry with each other, and then you got Carl, who's just kind of like weirdly off to the side. Like, he's just there. Like, it's such a weird thing, and the fact that the author's trying his damned hardest to try and make him kind of fit into the dichotomy and the group and kind of make him fit. It just doesn't really work. He would actually kind of fit more on the group in the next story, which actually, you know, Ascension, because that story takes place with a different group. He kind of fit more there. Which is kind of saying something. He runs Ice Bears, which everyone knows is infamous. And I like the fact that he ran Ice Bears until he summoned Royal Knight of the Ice Barrier, which is garbage. Don't play. No, seriously. Alchem, author, I know you're watching this. I know you subbed. you lost my respect when you made him play Royal Knight. Don't play Royal Knight. Just don't. And the weird thing is the difference between the other two characters and the Ice Bears and Carl's decks is they're more symbolic, but with Ice Bears it's more because, well, he suffered pyromania and he just picked an ice deck. I mean, there are better ways, but it's just compared to the thematic consistencies of the other two members, this one kind of comes off as flimsy. It's the main reason why I think he's kind of off, because he's just, you see, he doesn't really, it barely goes into depth on the Ice Fairies themselves. It more talks about the lore and more the fact he suffers pyromania, but it's like, you could have been ice, but that's kind of flimsy. It's kind of odd. Yeah, now, that's, I mean, it's fine for what it is, but Carl's just the only part of the story I just don't like. I don't like him. I really don't like him. And that's fine. If you like him, you like him. Grammar-wise, same grammar errors as last time. Mostly just getting the names wrong. I don't know. Pacing. The story's actually better paced than the original Shadowchasers and Power Primordial. It's a breath of fresh air that we got plenty of time to actually get used to what's going on, the characters meeting, and even characters interacting after the duel, and the story even has more personality in between the duels. Like, honestly, the Amazonians, they're actually very expressive. Like, whenever Natalie duels and the Amazonians just show off so much personality, which makes sense considering the fact they're the only archetype that has facial expressions, stuff like that. The scraps are all just robots and stuff like that. Ben's deck constantly changes until near the end, and Carl's monsters are just basically just guys in masks and stuff like that. You can't really be that expressive with them. This actually kind of picks up over the next couple stories, where the author just makes more monsters more expressive, but it all started with specifically these Amazonians, which is actually a great boon. It actually gave a lot of personality to the duels, and added and also another reason why I kind of like Natalie more than Dugan and Ben and Carl, because that added personality gave so much more dimension to her duels. Like, for instance, when one of her Amazonians was summoned and someone played Trap Hole, they would actually just stop and then look down, look at the hole, and then they fall. So, it's the small details that make those duels much more dynamic and much more entertaining to read than the other duels. I mainly like Dugan's duels, mainly because, Dugan's actually a good character, and I'm not a big fan of the scrapped archetype. If I want a deck that blows itself up, I'd rather play not even Mech Lords. No, goddamn no. What deck blows himself up? Gendora. Play Gendora. And again, my favorite deck is Melodious, and they just sit around laughing at their opponents, wondering why they can't attack them or do any damage, or why can't I even target you? It's like, ha ha. Yeah, so, but yeah, and even the duels, there are some duels that last the entire chapter, but then there's also shorter duels, and there's even breakaways from the duels to kind of get up to speed with other things happening, and that, again, brings so much life to these various duels, and it makes Torment so much better than even the original story. If I had to rate the story so far, it's Torment, Torment Ascension, the original, Although you can kind of switch Ascension in the original Power Primordial and then Soulscape. That's just really how it is. If you add Tournament of Shadows would actually be at the very top. I don't know where Conspiracy is going to be yet, but, you know, there's that. But yeah, it's a really solid story. There's, outside of Carl, which I'm just not a big fan of, there's nothing really actually wrong with it, and the grammar. Would I recommend this story? I actually would. And luckily, this one's like separate from Power Primordial, so you don't actually need to read it to actually figure out what's going on. Which is kind of isn't the case with Ascension, where you have to actually read Soulscape to actually kind of get one very specific plot point in Ascension. But, you know, Soulscape is actually short enough that it doesn't really matter. I would recommend it. My favorite part is actually the duel between Ben and Merrick. Bar none, the best written duel, even so far into, as I'm reading Conspiracy, it's far away the best written duel. It's the most suspenseful, it's the best paced, and it's just massively entertaining. And I don't want to go into detail over the specifics of that, outside of this duel was actually kind of being flown under the radar and built up over the course of several story of half of the story, with like Merrick just randomly showing up saying, "I'm gonna kill you, Ben. Next time we meet, I'm gonna beat you in a duel and I kill you." And then after that, Ben would constantly be thinking about Merrick and just slowly building up. And then Merrick shows up, like, "Ah, I'm back. You didn't think I'd be back, did you? No." It's like, "Too bad. I'm back. I'm gonna kill you. We're gonna duel. I'm gonna kill you." And the duel is just it's just so frantically paced of them throwing dirt at each other and just blowing smoke, and even Ben kind of getting a dig at Merrick's like, "Haha, you can't duel without the Winged Dragon Ross." Like, who decided that? And it's just massively entertaining. Both their life points are going up and down repeatedly. That's actually why the duel lasts that long, because both their life points constantly rise and lower like throughout the entire duel. So it's a great back and forth. And it's just a shame that that the other big duels that happened, like the closest duel, the closest other duel that I would have to say is the second best, actually from Tournament of Shadows, but we'll talk about that when we get to that. And also the penultimate, one of the final duels of Ascension with like the bad guy. And oddly enough, I made him sound like Emperor Palpatine. Unlimited power! I don't know why. But again, next week is going to be Ascension. I like final thoughts. I like Torment. It introduced a new cast and crew. -1 I'm not a fan of, but that's fine. It's a really solid story. It has very good fundamentals. It really what I would consider the best starting point for the anyone to get to really enjoy Shadowchasers, because it's just gonna go up from here. And I will see you next time. This has been Dark Symphony 777, and cut.